Hello, I'm Clarence Horton. Thank you for joining us again for another historical moment in the story of old Cabarrus County. The first settlers who came to this region found it to be a beautiful country of rolling hills, cut by swift streams which flowed into the area's one river, the river aptly named Rocky because of the large rocks in it. None of these streams were navigable, but all of them were strong enough to furnish currents which could power grist mills and sawmills necessary for the economy of those early times. Around those early mills grew up small communities. Usually there was a blacksmith shop, sometimes a post office, a general store at which farmers could trade their produce. They could spend the day there tending to their needs while they were waiting on the miller to grind out their crops of corn and of wheat. In the early 1800s, about 1810, a descendant of Elias Bost, a man named John Bost, built the first of the Bost mills along the Rocky River near its intersection with Hamby Branch off of Highway 200 in Cabarrus County. Mr. Bost was descended from Elias Bost, a Revolutionary War patriot and a man of great bravery and courage, who founded the family in this section of Cabarrus County. Mr. Elias Bost bought land along Rocky River, land on which his descendants still live to this day. The first mill that John Bost built in about 1810 was a great success. By 1850, according to the census, it was producing some 1,600 barrels of flour and about 2,500 bushels of cornmeal. But the great success of the mill began in the 1870s when Martin L. Bost, John's son, built the second and present mill building you see behind me here. That mill was a great success. Soon there was a small village in the area. A blacksmith shop was built there, a post office, a general store run by the Bost family. Later a cotton gin was built and operated with steam power until 1938. During the closing decades of the 19th and the early years of the 20th century, the old Bost Mill site was a favorite destination for Concord's young people, at least for those who were brave enough to endure the 4.5-hour wagon ride from Concord, which began at daybreak and which ended on the beautiful meadows and beaches of Rocky River, where the youngsters spent a day engaged in great fishing from the mill dam, rowboat rides, and playing baseball on the meadow. They all brought a picnic lunch, of course. Home-cooked chicken, hard-boiled eggs, homemade cakes and pies and breads. After an exhaustive day of picnicking, they piled into the wagons for the long trip home and enlivened that trip with perhaps a little courting and also by singing in harmony some of the favorite airs of that day. Unfortunately, catastrophic rains and flooding in 1908 destroyed or partially destroyed many of the old grist and sawmills in Cabarrus County. The Bost Grist Mill itself was lifted off its foundation and the structure partially destroyed. The Bost family elected to rebuild, however, as the mill had been profitable and served its community well for so many years. By 1913, they had rebuilt the mill structure itself and moved it far away from the river and from any future flooding. The mill continued to operate until about 1920, when profits began to dwindle. The old mill dam fell into disrepair and disuse in about 1926. By 1930, the mill had ceased operations. The old steam-powered cotton gin, however, continued to operate until about 1938, when it too was replaced by more modern technology. Fortunately, for those who want to study and relive those simpler times, Gene Bost, a direct descendant of the early pioneers, and his wife Brenda have labored to restore the old mill building and to open it to the public. You can now come to view the mill and its grounds, some of the outbuildings, on public tours which are regularly scheduled here. Highway 200, which runs today by the old Bost Mill site south to Georgetown and to the Reed Gold Mine, carries traffic today at speeds which would have been unbelievable to the horse and wagon days of the early 1900s, when youngsters came from Concord at 2 miles per hour to view the sights of the mill. However, if you listen closely, during the lulls in the traffic, it's easy to imagine that you hear the sounds of tired youngsters headed home in a wagon bed, singing in harmony the airs of another day. Goodbye, my lover, goodbye, my old Kentucky home, and the always beautiful in the evening by the moonlight. Thank you for joining us here down by the river. We hope to see you again real soon.